Picture this. It is 3:47 in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. Deep inside the National Military Command Center beneath the Pentagon, a wall of screens flickers with real-time satellite imagery. A watch officer sets down his coffee. His hand is trembling, because what he is seeing on the thermal overlay of the Taiwan Strait does not match any scheduled exercise, does not match any known pattern. 43 People's Liberation Army Navy warships have broken formation from their home ports in Fujian, Zhejiang, and Guangdong, simultaneously, not in sequence, simultaneously. Destroyers, frigates, amphibious assault docks, and at the center of this armada, the Shandong, China's second aircraft carrier, is cutting south through waters it has never operated in before, flanked by a screen of Type 055 Renhai-class cruisers, the most heavily armed surface combatants on the planet, not built by the United States. Within 11 minutes, the watch officer's secure phone call reaches the desk of the Secretary of Defense. Within 40 minutes, the commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command in Honolulu is dragged out of sleep. And within 90 minutes, two words ripple through every classified channel the American military operates. Those two words are Taiwan contingency. This is not a drill. This is not a recycled headline. What is unfolding in the waters between mainland China and the island of Taiwan right now represents the single most dangerous military escalation in the Western Pacific since the Third Taiwan Strait crisis of 1996. And if you think 1996 was resolved with a simple show of force, you need to understand something critical. The China of 1996 had 74 major surface combatants in its entire navy. The China of today has over 370. In 1996, Beijing did not possess a single operational aircraft carrier. Today it operates 3, with a 4th under construction. In 1996, the PLA Rocket Force, then called the 2nd Artillery Corps, could threaten Taiwan with roughly 30 short-range ballistic missiles. Today, conservative Pentagon estimates place that number at over 1,400, including the DF-15B, the DF-16, and the terrifying DF-17, a hypersonic glide vehicle that no existing missile defense system on Earth has publicly demonstrated the ability to intercept. The old world, the world where American carrier battle groups could simply sail into the strait and force Beijing to back down, that world is dead. It died quietly, across 2 decades of the most aggressive peacetime military buildup in modern history. And the event unfolding right now is the proof of death certificate. Let me give you the names, let me give you the data. Because Amanda and I have spent the last 72 hours pulling from the most authoritative sources available to piece together what is actually happening versus what the media is telling you. According to a classified threat briefing excerpted by Bloomberg on June 14th, the current Chinese deployment involves assets from all 3 of the PLA's major theater commands facing the Pacific: the Eastern Theater Command, the Southern Theater Command, and elements of the Northern Theater Command redeployed south at unusual speed. General Stephen Whiting, commander of U.S. Space Command, confirmed in a closed-door Senate Armed Services Committee session that American space-based infrared sensors detected a surge in Chinese military communications traffic starting 9 days ago. A spike he described, and I am quoting directly, as inconsistent with any exercise profile we have on record. That phrase alone should send a chill down your spine. Inconsistent with any exercise profile, meaning the Pentagon's own AI-driven pattern recognition systems that have cataloged every major PLA exercise since 2015, looked at this data and essentially said, "This is new. We do not know what this is." But the real shock was not the ships. Ships can be tracked. Ships move slowly. The real shock came from what the satellites saw on land. Imagery analyzed by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, and corroborated by Planet Labs' commercial satellite passes, revealed that China has activated at least 4 previously dormant short-range ballistic missile brigades along the Fujian coast. Launch vehicles have been moved from underground hardened shelters into pre-surveyed firing positions that face directly across the 100-mile-wide Taiwan Strait. The DF-15B transporter erector launchers were photographed uncamouflaged. Let me repeat that, uncamouflaged. In the world of military signaling, this is not an accident. When you hide your missiles, you are preparing for war. When you show your missiles, you are delivering a message. And the message Beijing is sending right now is as loud as a thermonuclear detonation. Moreover, the CSS report flagged something even more alarming. The the repositioning of DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile batteries to coastal sites within range of the sea lanes east of Taiwan. The DF-21D, NATO designation CSS-5 Mod 4, known colloquially by a name that tells you everything you need to know, the Carrier Killer. This is a medium-range ballistic missile with a maneuvering re-entry vehicle specifically designed to strike moving warships at sea. It carries a warhead estimated between 500 and 600 kilograms. It travels at speeds exceeding Mach 10 during its terminal phase. Not in testing, in operational conditions, against electronic jamming, against decoys, against a salvo of 4 or 6 or 12 simultaneously. But while the world watched the satellite images of missile launchers rolling into position along the Fujian coast, something far more sinister was happening underwater. And this part of the story is the part that has the Pentagon genuinely frightened, not concerned, not watchful, frightened. Because the United States submarine surveillance network, the backbone of American undersea dominance for 60 years, just went partially blind in the most critical waterway on Earth. The Sound Surveillance System, known as SOSUS, and its modern successor, the Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, IUSS, have been America's silent guardians beneath the Pacific since the Cold War. Thousands of miles of hydrophone arrays stretched across the ocean floor, listening for the telltale acoustic signatures of submarine propellers, reactor coolant pumps, and hull resonance. For decades, this network could track every Soviet and then Russian submarine that dared to leave port. It could hear a pin drop in a bathtub from 300 miles away. But China knew this, and China spent 15 years preparing a countermeasure that most Western analysts dismissed as aspirational. They were wrong, and the price of that error was fatal to American strategic confidence in the region. What happened is this. Beginning approximately 12 days ago, according to signals intelligence reviewed by the Office of Naval Intelligence, the PLA Navy deployed a constellation of undersea autonomous vehicles, essentially AI-driven underwater drones, into the deep water channels east of Taiwan, including the Bashi Channel between Taiwan and the Philippines, and the Miyako Strait between Okinawa and Miyako Island. These are the two critical choke points through which any American submarine force would need to transit to reach the Taiwan operational area. The Chinese drones, believed to be variants of the HSU-001 autonomous underwater vehicle first publicly displayed at a Beijing Defense Expo in 2019, are not attack platforms. They are something potentially worse. They are acoustic disruptors. They emit broadband noise patterns specifically calibrated to degrade the performance of American hydrophone arrays. Think of it as sonar jamming, but passive, persistent, and distributed across hundreds of square miles of ocean. The effect is devastating. Where American sonar operators once saw a clean acoustic picture, they now see static, noise, ghosts. And somewhere inside that noise, an unknown number of PLA Navy submarines, Type 039A UN-class diesel electrics, and the far more capable Type 095 nuclear attack submarines are moving into positions that the United States cannot precisely identify. Amanda pulled a quote from a retired senior Navy officer who spoke to Naval News on condition of anonymity. His words were blunt, quote, "We have not experienced this level of undersea domain uncertainty in the Western Pacific since 1944, end quote. Since 1944. That is not an exaggeration for dramatic effect. That is a flag officer comparing the current situation to the chaos of the Second World War. Let that sink in. And now, layer this onto the air domain, because what is happening above the water is equally unprecedented. Over the past 8 days, the PLA Air Force and PLA Naval Aviation have conducted a combined total of 478 sorties into Taiwan's air defense identification zone. 478. The previous single-day record, set in October 2021, was 56. They shattered that record on day 1 and have not stopped since. The aircraft involved are not just the usual suspects, not just the J-16 multi-role fighters and the Y-8 anti-submarine warfare planes that have become grimly routine in Taiwanese tracking reports. This time, the sorties include J-20 Mighty Dragon 5th generation stealth fighters operating in combat representative formations of 4-ship flights, accompanied by KJ-500 airborne early warning aircraft and Y-20U aerial refueling tankers. The presence of tankers is critical. It means the PLA is practicing sustained operations at extended range. It means they are rehearsing the ability to maintain air superiority not for hours, but for days. And most ominously, Taiwanese defense officials confirmed the detection of GJ-11 Sharp Sword stealth combat drones operating in conjunction with manned J-20 formations, the first confirmed operational deployment of China's loyal wingman concept in a near-combat environment. While the media ignored this technical detail, the implications are staggering. A loyal wingman drone like the GJ-11 is designed to fly ahead of manned fighters into the most dangerous threat environments, absorbing enemy radar attention, deploying electronic countermeasures, and even conducting strike missions, all while the human pilot remains safely behind the radar horizon. The United States Air Force has been developing its own collaborative combat aircraft program under the Next Generation Air Dominance Initiative. That program is not expected to reach initial operational capability until 2028 at the earliest. China, it appears, may have gotten there first, and they are testing it not in a desert range in Xinjiang, but in the skies directly above a potential war zone. But while the Pentagon tracked every jet and every ship, the most dangerous move was happening in a domain no camera can photograph and no satellite can see, the electromagnetic spectrum. And this is where the situation crosses from alarming into genuinely terrifying. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense issued an extraordinary statement 4 days ago, one that was buried beneath louder headlines about ship movements and missile deployments. The statement confirmed that multiple Taiwanese military communication systems experienced what it called unprecedented electromagnetic interference across the C-band and Ku-band frequency ranges. In plain language, someone was jamming Taiwan's ability to talk. Command and control links between Taipei and frontline units along the western coast degraded by what sources described to Reuters as 40 to 60% during peak interference windows. Radar systems at 3 air defense sites experienced ghost returns, false targets flooding their screens, making it nearly impossible to distinguish real threats from electronic phantoms. The source of the jamming has been traced to multiple PLA assets, but one platform stands out above all others: the Y-9G. This is China's dedicated electronic warfare aircraft, roughly analogous to the American EA-18G Growler, but operating on a much larger airframe with significantly greater power generation capacity. The Y-9G carries an integrated electronic attack suite capable of targeting enemy radar, communications, data links, and GPS signals simultaneously across multiple frequency bands. And according to Japanese Self-Defense Force tracking data shared with the US under bilateral intelligence agreements, at least 6 Y-9G aircraft have been operating in continuous rotation patterns over the median line of the Taiwan Strait for the past 5 days. 6. In electronic warfare, quantity matters almost as much as quality, because each additional jammer multiplies the cognitive overload on the defender's systems. 6 Y-9G aircraft, operating around the clock, represent a level of electromagnetic siege that Taiwan's aging electronic warfare defenses were never designed to withstand. Now let me pull you back from the technical abyss for a moment and talk about what all of this means at the strategic level. Because the Pentagon is not merely alarmed by the size of China's deployment. Size can be managed. Size can be deterred. What has American planners reaching for the emergency binder is the integration. Every element I have just described to you, the naval armada, the submarine screen, the air superiority package, the drone warfare layer, the electronic attack campaign, they are not operating independently. They are operating as a single synchronized system. This is what military theorists call a joint fires complex, and it is exactly, precisely, down to the doctrinal detail, what the PLA has been writing about in its war planning documents for 15 years. Documents that American intelligence agencies translated, analyzed, and in many cases dismissed as aspirational. While the president spoke of diplomatic channels and de-escalation at a hastily arranged press conference, his closest allies in the national security establishment were already making a series of calls that changed everything. Calls not to Beijing, calls to Tokyo, calls to Canberra, calls to Manila, because the American response that was being assembled behind closed doors was not a diplomatic response, it was an operational one. and its scale would become clear within 48 hours in a way that stunned even veteran Pacific watchers. Within 48 hours of those secure phone calls, the United States executed what the Indo-Pacific Command publicly labeled a scheduled repositioning of forward-deployed assets. Scheduled. That word was chosen with surgical precision to avoid triggering panic in global markets. But there was nothing scheduled about what happened next. The USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group, which had been conducting routine operations in the Philippine Sea, turned north at flank speed and took up station approximately 200 nautical miles southeast of Taiwan. Simultaneously, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, already deployed to the Western Pacific, repositioned from the South China Sea to a holding area east of the Bashi Channel. 2 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, over 150 strike aircraft between them, approximately 16 escort vessels, including Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruisers and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, loaded with a combined vertical launch system capacity of over 1,000 missile cells, Tomahawk cruise missiles, SM-6 dual-purpose interceptors capable of engaging both aircraft and ballistic missiles, SM-3 Block 2IA exo-atmospheric kill vehicles designed to shoot down medium-range ballistic missiles in space. This was not a diplomatic signal. This was a wall of steel and fire positioned precisely where China's military planners would need to project power to complete an encirclement of Taiwan. But the carriers were only the visible layer. The invisible layer was arguably more lethal. U.S. submarine force movements are among the most closely guarded secrets in the American military. The Navy does not confirm or deny the position of any submarine at any time. But Japanese maritime patrol aircraft operating P-1 surveillance planes out of Naha Air Base in Okinawa detected acoustic signatures consistent with at least 3 Virginia-class fast-attack submarines transiting south through the Miyako Strait during the same 48-hour window. The Virginia-class Block V submarine carries up to 40 Tomahawk cruise missiles in its Virginia payload module. 3 boats, 120 Tomahawks, invisible, silent, and positioned inside the PLA's defensive perimeter before Beijing even knew they were there. Moreover, the Air Force response was equally ferocious in its quiet intensity. Satellite imagery captured by commercial provider Maxar Technologies showed a sudden surge of activity at Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. B-52H Stratofortress bombers, already forward deployed under the Continuous Bomber Presence mission, were joined by at least 4 B-1B Lancers, redeployed from Dyess Air Force Base in Texas. The B-1B carries the LRASM, the long-range anti-ship missile, a stealthy autonomous cruise missile designed specifically to hunt and kill enemy warships in contested electronic warfare environments. Each B-1B can carry 24 LRASMs internally, 4 aircraft, 96 ship-killing missiles, and those are just the ones the satellites could see. Amanda and I cross-referenced flight tracking data with NOTAM, Notice to Airmen, closures across the Pacific, and what we found suggests that at least 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers departed Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri on transponder dark flights heading west. The B-2 has never publicly been forward deployed during a Taiwan crisis. If confirmed, this would represent a significant escalation in American nuclear signaling, because the B-2 is a dual-capable platform. It can carry both conventional and thermonuclear weapons. And when a B-2 goes dark over the Pacific, Beijing's strategic calculus changes overnight. There were only 90 minutes between the moment the B-52s at Andersen received their mission packages and the moment they were airborne, fully loaded, heading northwest toward predetermined orbit points over the Philippine Sea. Here is what happened when those bombers finally received the code. Not a launch code, not yet, but a mission validation code that authorized them to proceed to what the Air Force calls the holding pattern of last resort, a position from which strike missions can be executed within minutes of a presidential order. 90 minutes. That is how close the machinery of American power came to full kinetic activation, and the world did not even know it was happening. So where does this leave us? This concludes the first part of our deep dive. The military machines are in motion, the pieces are on the board, and the world holds its breath. Stay tuned for part 2, where we model the 3 potential scenarios that could decide the future of the Western Pacific. This is not just a headline, it is history unfolding. I'll see you in the next part. So where does this leave us? Amanda and I have modeled 3 scenarios based on the current force dispositions, the diplomatic signals, and the historical precedents, and none of them are comfortable. Scenario 1. Manage de-escalation. This is the outcome that every rational actor in Washington, Beijing, Taipei, and Tokyo publicly claims to want. Under this scenario, the current Chinese deployment peaks within the next 7 to 10 days, and then gradually draws down, repackaged by Beijing's state media as a successful demonstration of sovereignty. The United States quietly pulls its carrier groups back to normal operating areas. Diplomatic backchannels, likely running through Singapore or Vienna, produce a vague joint statement reaffirming the status quo. Markets stabilize, headlines fade, but here is what changes even under this best-case outcome. Taiwan's faith in the implicit American security guarantee cracks, not shatters, cracks, and every crack is a fissure that Beijing will exploit in the next crisis, and there will be a next crisis. Scenario 2. Regional realignment. Under this scenario, the crisis does not escalate to direct conflict, but it does not truly de-escalate either. Instead, it becomes the new normal. China maintains a persistent elevated military presence in the strait, normalizing what was once considered provocative. Taiwan responds by accelerating its asymmetric defense programs, coastal missile batteries, sea mines, mobile air defense systems, transforming the island into what defense planners call a porcupine. Japan, jolted by the proximity of Chinese military operations to its southwestern islands, fast-tracks its own rearmament under the 2022 National Security Strategy, potentially doubling defense spending within 3 years. The Philippines deepens its military cooperation with the United States, granting access to additional bases under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. Australia accelerates the AUKUS submarine program. The entire Western Pacific undergoes a tectonic shift in alliance architecture, not because of war, but because of the credible threat of war. This is the scenario that many analysts at Rand Corporation and the Brookings Institution consider most likely. And it is, in many ways, the most dangerous of the 3, because it creates a permanent state of armed tension with no clear off-ramp, where a single miscalculation, a pilot who flies too close, a ship captain who misreads a radar contact, a submarine that surfaces in the wrong grid square, could ignite the very conflict everyone is trying to avoid. Scenario 3. Total escalation. This is the scenario that no one in an official capacity will discuss on the record, but that every war college in the Western world is gaming right now. Under this scenario, China interprets the American military buildup not as deterrence, but as encirclement. Beijing's leadership, facing domestic political pressure and a slowing economy, concludes that the window for reunification with Taiwan is closing, that American, Japanese, and Australian military capabilities will only grow stronger with time. And so they move. Not with a dramatic amphibious invasion across the strait. That would be the most complex military operation in human history, dwarfing D-Day in scale and risk. Instead, they move with a quarantine. A selective naval and air blockade of Taiwan, cutting the island's energy imports and semiconductor exports without firing a single shot at an American asset. This forces Washington into an impossible choice: break the blockade and risk direct great power conflict, or accept the blockade and watch Taiwan slowly suffocate. This is the scenario that keeps the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff awake at night. Because there is no good answer. Every option carries the risk of a miscalculation that spirals into a conflict between 2 nuclear-armed superpowers. And once that spiral begins, the physics of escalation become almost impossible to reverse. What you are watching unfold in the Taiwan Strait right now is not a headline. It is not a news cycle. It is the tectonic grinding of 2 continental plates of power, and the friction between them is generating heat that the entire world will feel. In energy prices, in semiconductor supply chains, in the stock portfolios sitting in your retirement account, in the deployment orders handed to 22-year-old sailors who signed up for college money and are now staring at a radar screen in the South China Sea, wondering if tonight is the night the world changes forever. The balance of power in the Western Pacific has not merely shifted, it has shattered and is being reassembled in real time by force, by fear, and by the cold mathematics of missile range and radar cross-section. The Taiwan Strait no longer belongs to the world that existed last month. It belongs to whatever comes next, and whatever comes next will be decided not by diplomats in conference rooms, but by the men and women sitting in the combat information centers of warships that are, at this very moment, closing distance with each other in waters that have not seen this level of military confrontation since the last Great War. The only question left is whether the leaders on both sides of this equation are wise enough to step back from the edge, or whether the edge has already crumbled beneath their feet. If this breakdown gave you clarity on what is really happening in the most dangerous waterway on Earth, subscribe to the channel now. Amanda and I will be here, tracking every ship, every satellite image, every classified leak, so that you are never caught off guard. Hit the notification bell, because the next update on this crisis may not wait for tomorrow.